He's Frank Schwab. She's Jori Epstein. I'm Jason Fitz. It's inside coverage. The where, the when, the how, the why of everything you need to know about what's happening in the NFL. Yesterday was Tuesday, and in case you weren't paying attention, nothing big happened in the world, especially not the NFL trade deadline. The NFL trade deadline came and went yesterday. I'm still, y'all, just as a general rule, I'm not sure how the NFL and college football. Last night, we did our college football power hour for the college football rankings. A big night for college football. How did nobody in the NFL or the college football look around and be like, hey, it feels like that Tuesday has something else going on that the country might be paying attention to. Maybe we push the trade deadline back like a day. I'm just saying, like, the NFL owners could have sat back and been like, you know what? Wednesday might be better than Tuesday this year.
I know. Who knew that the NFL was willing to share the stage with, like, literally anyone? I did not think it was possible, but I filed a winners and losers for the trade deadline very late Tuesday night. And I know we're going to get more into the content, but when our editor, Dan Agnew, responded to it, he was like, nicely done, like, entertaining and thought-provoking. And I was like, one, thank you. But two, like, if it seemed like I was a little more sassy in today's column, like, people just needed some levity. Like, regardless of politics, these debates get crazy in our country. And so I was like, let's just give people something a little bit fun, because anyone reading these stories clearly wants to read about something other than politics right now.
That's what I love about what we do. And in all honesty, as much as today, as we sit here Wednesday, everybody's reacting to so much of what happened politically in this country. Let's just be very real. The cool thing is we get to come here and talk about football. So let's come here and talk about football for a second. Frank, obviously trade deadline came and went. Jori has put up an article with some winners and some losers. And because I'm just feeling sassy, I'm going to get straight to a debate, because she has the New Orleans Saints.
It's not Friday.
As a trade
it's not
deadline.
Feisty Friday. Come on.
No.
It's about to be Spicy Wednesday.
What is it? Worked Up Wednesday? What do we like? Worked Up Wednesday?
I kind of like that more than I thought I was going to.
So look at that. See, we're on a roll. The Saints, according to Jori, are a trade deadline winner. Frank, what do you say?
I need an explanation here, Jori. You know I love you. You're one of my favorite teammates here at Yahoo Sports, but I wholeheartedly...
Can we get a power ranking of those? Okay,
yeah,
continue.
Charles Robinson,
dead
last. However many went for those.
Where do I rank on this power ranking of people, Frank?
We'll see. You're kind of like the Vikings. You go up and down, and it's some weeks I'm like, hey, Fitz is awesome. Some weeks I'm like, yeah. But anyway, the Saints. I talked about this last week. The Saints should have traded anybody who was not nailed down. I mean, they could have just traded all 53 and I'd have been fine with it. And I know not realistic, but it could have done that. They need to start this wholesale rebuild. Really, they just make one move, and it's their one player that I don't know that they really should trade, and that's Marshawn Lattimore. I do get they got a nice return from him for the Commanders. I viewed that as a heck of a win for the Washington Commanders. We could talk about that side of it, but the Saints not being very active in this trade deadline really confused me. It just seems like same old Saints where they don't want to admit what's coming, and that's a rebuild. So, Jori, I am very interested. Please try to convince me how the Saints won this trade deadline.
Yeah, I talked to someone with a pretty good knowledge of the Saints operations late Tuesday night, and I was like, this seems like a pretty good haul. And they're like, look, we were getting pretty good offers on several of our players. Like, people understand they won 2 games and then they lost 7 straight. They fired their coach this week. Like, no one thinks that they are expecting 2024 to be their year. And so they're getting all these good offers. But the person said, like, give me an example of a time when a fire sale has worked. Give me an example. And the way that they put it, a little bit graphic, is they're like, if you're going to do this, you have to leave no hostage, because if you start burning things down and really showing players you are not even trying to win, not that you're doing everything to win, you're not even trying to win, then from a cultural standpoint, the next time adversity hits, players are going to be like, oh no, they're just going to start selling us off. They view us only as assets, not as assets and players or people, but only as assets. And so I think, first of all, let's keep that in mind, is that it's easy to say, sell everyone. It doesn't actually work out. On the flip side, if the Saints had sold nobody, I think that that's kind of the point of relativity I was working off of, because for so many years, and I put this in my column, like, people are freaking obsessed with the Saints salary cap and like their salary cap gymnastics, and people get really, really worked up about this, to the point where I'm like, clearly they understand what's going on more than we do, because like, they're under the cap legally in some ways, and they're not having a year where they just can't buy anyone. They're like, this person who I was talking to last night was like, give me an example of a move we were not able to make because of our salary cap. And I think their ability to sign Derek Carr, whether you agree with the acquisition or not, the fact that they were not financially barred from signing a quarterback, I do think that reflects that. And so when I look at that, and I didn't know if they were going to make any moves, I say, you took Marshawn Lattimore, who, yes, was an anchor, but he's an anchor who's already really, really good in a year when you're not there yet. And you got, for Marshawn in the fifth, a third, a fourth, and a sixth. Well, for people who are concerned about the salary cap, they got a ton of return on this. Now, granted, you have to factor in what someone called to me like the replacement cost of you lose him, but are you spending all of those draft picks hoping you're going to hit on someone? But I think that to really boil it down, this is a team that I didn't know if they would make any moves, and they were realistic and made a move. They didn't make a fire sale, but I don't believe a fire sale works. And the last thing I'll say for all these people who are like, their salary cap is insane, is when I was talking to this person, they were saying, okay, the salary cap gymnastics, let's say it started 2006 when like Sean is with the Saints, Sean Payton. From 2006 to 2024, Frank and Fitz, how many teams do you think have more regular season wins than the New Orleans Saints from 2006 until now?
Oh, not many, but not many teams.
Okay, no, give me your number. How many do you think?
Probably 3.
Yeah, I would have said 6 or 7.
Okay, so yeah, 4. But it's the Patriots, the Packers, the Steelers, and the Ravens, all of whom are viewed as very well-run organizations. And I understand some of that is earlier tilted, although 2020 really isn't that far away. But I think when you look at it, like their salary cap situation is not keeping them from making the moves. And I just think that is worth putting into the NFL discourse because people love to rely on the other narrative.
This all works when you have a top 10 quarterback like Drew Brees, a top 10 all-time quarterback like Drew Brees. That's not the case anymore. I think they got to go about it in a different way. And the whole thing about culture, in some cases, yes, if you had a new coach, if you're trying to build something, I get that. They don't have a coach anymore. They're hiring somebody who's changing the culture anyway. It's going to be one of those, if you're not on board with this, that's fine. We'll find some people who are. So whatever happens the rest of the season, I really don't think matters to the Saints going forward. As far as trading everybody, waving the white flag, putting it out there that, oh, well, you're just assets, we'll trade off. Well, that's fine. The culture resets in January anyway when they make a hire. So I don't buy that argument. I really don't. The salary cap stuff, yeah, I do get it. The Saints keep, figuring out ways to push it to the future. And they're masterful at that. I will grant them that. But at some point, they've just been a mediocre football team for a while now since their top 10 all-time quarterback left and their maybe top 20 all-time coach left. So it's just, I just don't see there being any reason not to hit the reset button. And like you said with Lattimore, yeah, they did get some draft picks back. You are praying one of those draft picks is as good as Marshawn Lattimore. Like you like the chances of you hitting a Marshawn Lattimore in the 3rd round is pretty low. It really is. I respect that trade. I got it. I just think that I don't mind that trade. That trade was actually pretty good. That's fine. I get that. But it's that they didn't make other trades. Chase Young, like why not? What are we doing here? And I think there's some self-preservation involved here where, oh my God, if we go 2-15, we're all getting ushered out. Well, maybe we can go 7-10 and get another lease on life for the people who are still there. I don't think they made decisions that were in the best interest of the Saints beyond 2024. I thought some of the decisions were made as, like you talked about, the culture, we can't possibly lose every game the rest of the way. Why not? Who cares? Again, their culture resets in January anyway. So I thought there was some self-preservation moves here going on.
Okay, 2 responses to that. The first is, I did ask this person with the Saints, I said, is there ever a good time in the NFL to rebuild or retool your roster? And if so, what is that threshold? Because whether it's the Colts and Anthony Richardson or the Panthers and Bryce Young, I feel like we see all of these teams that aren't operating. And the person responded, I love this, that who are you asking? If there is an owner, are you asking from the owner's standpoint? Are you asking from the coach standpoint? Or are you asking from the general manager standpoint? Because at the very least, from the coach and general manager standpoint, there is never a good time to rebuild because you're not going to be there to see the fruits of your labor. And so we have to factor that in. And I don't think that's only selfish. I think that's just the reality of this league. And if the league wanted something different, they would set up another system. The other thing I'll note is that I struggle to believe in teams like kind of fake or unwarranted confidence when it's like the Jerry Jones element of, well, we liked him coming out of college and there could be a storybook ending, so let's go there. I do think, however, that it's more compelling if you say, look how many starters we have injured. Look how many games missed, our starters have had, we believe that if we get those injured players back, we are going to be better. Not this year, but next year. And I do think that the Saints' injuries are a factor. So I don't think that they have the quarterback who's going to be the answer yet in Derek Carr. And I don't think they have everyone. But I do understand why, if you are factoring in what it will look like when injured players come back, you can convince yourself that you're closer than you are.
Convince yourself you want, though. Like, convince yourself you're going to be 9-8.
That you're a division contender. I'm not saying they're Super Bowl contender right now, but a division contender.
But but a division, the worst division in football, which it might not be this year. I don't know. But you're really, the Saints, that's my problem with the Saints. And I wrote about this in depth in the team preview. I remember writing about this, that their goal is to be just good enough to win the worst division of football. And that's just not a ceiling you want to hit in the NFL. And there was no ceiling beyond that because of the moves they've made, because of the decisions they've made. They just keep chasing mediocrity, where the best thing for them would just to admit we're not very good. We're not that bad either. I guess it might be the rest of the year, but to just admit we're not a Super Bowl contender or even close. We're just praying the rest of the division stinks so we can sneak into the playoffs at 9-8. And that's just not a good way to live in the NFL. That's the biggest problem I have with the Saints, is that they have this short-term thought of, if we get all of our injured guys back. Well, if you get all of your injured guys back, again, you're an 8-9 win football team. Like, big deal. That's really not getting you anywhere. It goes back to the Alvin Kamara thing for me. When they signed him to that extension and basically took him off the trade market, my thought was, what is your long-term goal here? Alvin Kamara's not going to be good by the time you're good. You could have gotten something for Alvin Kamara. Like, what is the thought process here? Like, it just doesn't seem like there's any plan with the New Orleans Saints beyond, let's try to be 9-8 next year and maybe win the division if the Falcons and Buccaneers stink. Like, I just don't know that that's the road I want to go down in the NFL.
The running back. He's not buying what Saquon Barkley just did for the Eagles.
The interesting part of it to me, Frank, you keep talking about, like, for what? I'm not sure most teams are very good at looking in the mirror and being honest about where they are. No. If you're New Orleans, you're looking at it and say, well, all we got to do is get healthy and then we can be competitive. And then you're saying that if we can get in the playoffs, get in the dance, you got a chance. That's not a reliable way to build your franchise. So I think the hard part about this for me is that New Orleans, in my mind, is in need of a complete rebuild. And this is the right time to do it. Dennis Allen's out the door. If you're going to have a cultural sort of whiplash moment, this is the best time to do it also, because whatever coach comes in is going to replace a lot of this roster anyway. The roster turnover under a new coaching staff is always jarring. And the more I look at this, not just for the Saints, but for every team, rebuilds are like golf. It's one of the few things in the world that no matter how much you do it, you don't often get better at it. And the number of teams that are constantly in rebuild mode because they screw it up is alarming to me. So if you're the Saints and you're about to enter rebuild mode, learn from everybody else's mistakes. Have a very clear vision from the top down of exactly who you are, exactly how you fix it, exactly what that time frame looks like, and be real with yourself about the processes you're going to have to go through. And I do believe it takes a clear vision from one person that then hires a president of football operations, who then hires a coach, who then hires an offensive coordinator. Like, these steps have to happen in a very particular way for it to work. If you're looking for any sort of a perfect example of how a rebuild can be done, the Commanders, right? Like, again, what did I just say? Like, new owner to new team president to new GM to new head coach to new offensive coordinator to new quarterback. Like, they blew it up and suddenly they are seen wildly differently. And now, I mean, Frank, you mentioned that it's a big move. This is like the Commanders go all in right now. And that makes total sense. Like, it'd be easy to say the Commanders just decided to sit pat because they're ahead of schedule, Frank. But instead, the Commanders came in and said, oh, hell no. Like, we got a real shot this year. We're going to bolster one of our weaknesses. Like, I thought Lattimore to the Commanders was a significant move.
I think this might be my favorite trade of the entire season, the trade season, because you talk about they went all in, but really they didn't. I thought that this was
power rank the trades, and this is going to be number one.
Yeah, I should. Then everybody
something
can argue
else
about
I can critique for you.
Yeah, right. They did. I look at it this way. They got the late round pick swap. Okay, yeah, there is some value lost there. A 4th round pick and a 3rd round pick. Well, one of those picks has to account for the player, right? You're drafting somebody with those slots, but you get Marshawn Lattimore. So really only gave up one extra pick. In my mind, a mid-round pick, that to me is not too bad. They're going to give a contract, but this was startling to me. I know the Saints don't think salary cap room matters, but it kind of does to me. And there's only 4 teams in the NFL that have more than $100 million in projected salary cap space for next year. One of those is the team that leads the NFC East right now, and that's Washington Commanders. This is the perfect situation for them of they can build like the Houston Texans did this past offseason, or other teams we've seen do it. We have a star quarterback on his rookie deal. We can spend like crazy to become contenders. Let me tell you, the Washington Commanders roster 2025 is going to be a lot better than the one right now, and they're really good right now. So this was a perfect situation for them to add a player that helps them in the present. He becomes one of their best defensive players right now, and a guy who helps them in the future going forward without mortgaging too much. They could pay him. They got the money for it. Perfect trade for the Commanders in the present and the future. Bravo. Well done, Commanders.
Yeah, I also love this trade for the Commanders, and I think the Commanders are ahead of schedule. I mean, we talk about that in terms of expectations and the life cycle of a team building. And yes, Jaden Daniels, they hoped would be their guy, but they didn't think that they would have seen that much confidence and evidence that he is their guy 9 games into his career and into the season. And so I think when you look at it, the offense is in such a great place, and you never know how long Cliff Kingsbury is going to be there. And he's not the only reason the offense is working, but I think he is a big part. And I mean, I would expect him to get head coaching interviews this season. I don't know that he would get jobs. And so when I look at what Detroit is doing, having both their coordinators back, or the way that Kansas City has had success, having that coordinator continuity, you want to be able to capitalize on that and make sure you have the talent so that if you can keep your coaches for a few years, you can operate on that. Also, Dan Quinn is the head coach, and he's got like a defensive line history primarily, although obviously he's coordinated defenses on whole, but his coordinator, Joe Witt, actually comes from a secondary background. And so I love the thought of how he's going to be able to scheme Marshawn Lattimore. I think one thing I wonder, though, when I think about how much to be excited about the Commanders there is we felt this way about the Texans last year. They got some guys in the building. It wasn't the same formula from, like, obviously the defenders they had in Will Anderson Jr. But then a year later, the Texans are still very good, but their quarterback production, not necessarily ability, but production when you look in the scheme of the offense, has taken a step back. Now, being at the Jets-Texans game last Thursday, I think a big factor of that is obviously the offensive line. And so maybe that's just the answer. But when you guys look at the Commanders, how do you get the Commanders who, in adding Marshawn Lattimore, are not just thinking about this year, but also next year, how do you get them next year to be able to move forward rather than take a step back the way it feels like the Texans are?
I think it's just overall roster building. And I trust Adam Peters. I really do. I think he's a really, really good GM. I trust Dan Quinn. Like, the difference between the Washington Commanders defense that we saw, say, week 3 when they played the Bengals, or was that week 2? Early in the season when they beat the Bengals, their defense was bad back then. Now I look at the Commanders defense, I'm like, it's actually not that bad. Like, they're making strides every single week. I just trust Dan Quinn as a coach, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I trust Adam Peters to do the right thing, roster building. And look, the Texans aren't bad. Like, I mean, they're probably not as great as we thought, but they're still the type of team that, if they can get healthy, if Nico Collins never gets hurt, if Stephon Diggs never gets hurt, they're probably sitting there about 7-2 right now. And we're talking about them as potential Super Bowl contenders. I think the same thing can happen to the Commanders. Look, Jaden Daniels is probably going to regress next year. It's hard to do this year after year in the NFL. Like, it just is.
Right.
But I think that they're going to, I trust their infrastructure right now so much. And I know, like, Fitz and C-Rob laughed at me a couple weeks ago when I was like, this Commander situation that everybody stepped into is actually pretty good. I believe that because it was a clean slate. It was a kind of clean slate the New Orleans Saints need, but that's a different conversation. These guys, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, they stepped into a situation where the bar was really low, ownership was brand new and wanting to a winner, the fans really were clamoring for anything positive, and they could shape the roster however they wanted to. They had the pick to get the quarterback they wanted, and they've done that. And now I have full confidence that this is actually one of the most well-run teams in the NFL, as crazy as that sounds to say about the Washington Commanders.
I think the Commanders, too. Like, anytime you can address one side of the ball in an offseason where you don't have to worry about it as much in the next offseason, that's a huge home run. The Commanders can come into this following offseason, to answer your question, Jory, and really look at it and say, we are going to shore up the defensive side of the ball. Remember, they gave up a lot of yards rushing.
They could be a team. Here, T. Higgins, here's $35 million a year. We got the money for it.
But they could also look at how do we address some of our defensive line issues. I know injury was part of that this year. The sort of the middle of the defense where they've been gashed in the running game gave up 164 yards in the first half of the game last week alone, right? So they can continue. They are over accomplishing where I thought they would be on the defensive side of the ball, particularly. So the fact that they get to then bring in probably an influx of talent, they'll have money to spend. They'll be able to focus the draft on one side of the ball. I think absolutely puts them in a good situation to be good moving forward. And yes, I mean, Jaden Daniels is way ahead of the curve. He will deal with some of what C.J. Stroud has dealt with, a little bit of a comeback in year 2. I think that's natural. That's why I honestly think, even though it's bad radio and bad podcasting sometimes where we have to immediately react to everything, I think it takes 3 years to know if a quarterback's really going to be great. Year 1, they're ahead. Year 2, the league catches up. Year 3, they got to bounce back up forward. And I think that's happened a little bit with C.J. Stroud, and that's what's going to happen. I expect that to happen with Jaden Daniels. Speaking of quarterbacks, I know we already did the Saints, but let's be real for a second. I think everybody on the show agrees that Derek Carr is not particularly a good starting quarterback. He's not going to win you a Super Bowl.
Michael Thomas sure doesn't think he's good. I'll tell you that.
No, I think he's good, not great.
He's going to start somewhere in the NFL next year.
Fine.
There's no way.
There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, and there is nobody in this draft who's going to be a Jaden Daniels.
If you need someone to react with class and poise to a receiver coming after them on Twitter, Derek Carr's your guy.
I mean, the thing of it is, like, we hammer home this narrative of, like, Derek Carr sucks. Not we, but, like, the general football cop population hammers home the narrative that Derek Carr sucks. And I saw Josh DeBow in the AP pointed out, no quarterback had more losses in 4 seasons, 5 seasons, all the way through 11 seasons. I get it. He loses a bunch of football games. But, like, there are going to be teams that don't address the quarterback position because they can't in the draft, that are simply going to look around at Derek Carr, who I don't think will be with the Saints next year, and say, you know what? I'll take a flyer on Derek Carr. Like, you can't tell me right now the Raiders wouldn't rather have Derek Carr than have the mess they have at the quarterback position. And if the Giants move on from Daniel Jones, guess what? He's going to be in that same category. Daniel Jones is going to start somewhere next year in the NFL because there just aren't enough good quarterbacks. So as much as we say these guys suck.
Daniel Jones will compete for a starting job. I'm not sure whether he'll start.
I mean, at some point, musical chairs happens. It's hard to fill all these spots. It really is. You look at teams like the Titans. Like, are the Titans really going to bring back Will Levis? Fitz's favorite dude? No, probably not. Seahawks with Geno, probably bring him back, but I don't know. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers might retire. Like, there's a lot of teams out there who are going to be fishing around a quarterback. And you look, and this draft class is just, like, again, I've made the joke because it was so jarring on our text thread message that Nate Tice was like, yeah, the top QB of my class, he could be like a Chad Pennington. It's like, oh my God, really? That's the upside of this class? Like, there are no quick fixes in this year's draft class at quarterback, which is going to make next offseason just batty. We are going to see quarterbacks Daniel Jones is going to get overpaid, and Sam Darnold's going to get overpaid, and all these things, Jameis Winston, and it's going to be a really, really weird offseason for quarterbacks.
It's pretty easy for me right now to say that the Raiders don't have a quarterback, the Giants may not have a quarterback next year, the Panthers don't have a quarterback, the Browns don't have a quarterback that they can actually rely on. That's just that the Colts are going to need to bring in a quarterback to compete. That's 5 teams there without even thinking, right? That's 5 teams without even thinking.
Yeah. The Colts, after giving their 4th overall pick last year to Anthony Richardson.
I think Richardson's going to be their guy. He's going to be their guy on opening day. Yeah, and it did not look good on Sunday night. Ooh,
but that's also why, like, I'm not done on Anthony Richardson because there's going to be a team out there. If Anthony Richardson is actually put up in the trade market at all, there's going to be a team that's like, well, man, I'm not
putting up on the trade market.
No.
I hope they don't.
I'm not
Same with Bryce.
I'm saying that's not how teams work. Like, teams are way too afraid of the guy succeeding elsewhere and looking like fools.
All right, so every team that needs a quarterback in this offseason is going to be a loser. Let's look at some other losers at the trade deadline. And I liked, frankly, wait. One more winner, just quick lap here. Because, Jori, last time I checked, you had the Chiefs as a winner on the trade deadline.
My exact wording in my column was the Chiefs' chance of three-peating, because obviously we know that no one has ever three-peated in the NFL. No one has won the Super Bowl 3 years in a row, and that's what the Kansas City Chiefs are currently trying to do. They get Josh Uche on the defensive side, fine, but then they get DeAndre Hopkins on offense, and I texted someone who had worked with DeAndre when this happens, and I'm like, can you help me understand this? And he was like, look, like, he doesn't have the speed he used to have. He's not going to run for you, but he's got great hands and incredible ball control. And then they were like, the only question I have is is he a little superfluous when you already have Travis Kelce? And then you see what DeAndre did on Monday night in the overtime one against the Bucs, where he had 2 touchdowns. I think it was like 5 of 6 for 88 and 2 touchdowns. In addition to Travis Kelce having his first 100-yard receiving game in the regular season in over a year. So this was not either or. And when I look at it, I'm like, there are 2 elements here. There is, if you want to be a really good player when you age, go to the Tennessee Titans and then leave, and you too can be A.J. Brown, Derek Carr, and now DeAndre Hopkins. And I know he doesn't have the body of work yet that they have, but like, goodness gracious, leaving the Titans is good for business. And then on the other side, the same way that the Patriots were reviving all these guys in their career, there are all these Chiefs players now who you're like, you should be washed. And then they go with Patrick Mahomes, and it's like, or maybe they're not. So Aaron Rodgers and Thomas Morstead believe that cayenne pepper and water is the fountain of youth. I think that it's just Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
If only somebody had started a podcast a few weeks ago calling the DeAndre Hopkins trade a mega trade that was worth changing the entire podcast for. If only somebody had said that, then maybe received a slight amount of doubt from somebody.
Who knows? Look at that. I don't remember this. I don't know. He's going to be a beast in the red zone. I'll give you that. Like, you could see that. Like, yeah, Patrick Mahomes is going to be like, where's DeAndre? I'm just going to throw him 50-50 balls. He's going to come down with them. I get that. He's just, I don't know if he's going to be the crazy difference maker you do.
It's not going to be, look, Frank, I think the moderate answer here is that when you have an experienced wide receiver that is absolutely incredible, it has had an incredible career and knows the game as well as DeAndre Hopkins does. Yeah. I think the advantage midway through the season is that you've got a smart player with a brilliant head coach and a brilliant quarterback, and he's going to be able to absorb that offense quickly. He's going to know exactly what's asked of him quickly, and he's going to make a difference. And look, I think it's pretty, I know it's only a short sample size, but we saw the immediate impact from DeAndre Hopkins at a far different level than we've seen the immediate impact of Devontae Adams, for example, who was playing with his bestie in the Jets. Like, DeAndre has made a bigger difference. So I think sometimes it's not.
They don't win that game on Monday night without DeAndre Hopkins or without Todd Bowles kicking an extra point, which we've all forgotten about by now. One of the worst decisions of the NFL season, but whatever.
All right. So they were losers because of Bowles. Bowles may be a loser. Now let's get to the losers. All right. So who stood out to you? We'll save the Cowboys. I'm going to save the Cowboys conversation because we need to have a longer talk about the Cowboys. We need to take them back behind the shed, maybe do some butt whooping. So aside from the Cowboys, who stood out to you, Jori, as a loser on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote in there the Titans' dignity, but I already explained that with all the players that have left them. And then you add in the Remember the Titans celebration that DeAndre Hopkins did after he scored one of his touchdowns the other night. So
he did say he said he was paying respects to the record.
To
the record.
Yes. A moment to remember everything they did for me. That said, I'm going to go with the Steelers offense because here's the deal. If you were just like, hey, the Steelers have their guys, they've got George Pickens, Najee Harris in the running game are working, Russell Wilson's improved the pass game, just want one more piece just for depth, and you said, give me Mike Williams, fine. But that's not what the Steelers did. The Steelers have broadcasted for months that they wanted another receiver, another top receiver. They were willing to pay. They believed in it. They're famously paying 2 quarterbacks very little this year. They're getting Russell Wilson for like $1.2 million while the Denver Broncos pay the other $85 million over the next 2 years. And so you look at this and you say, Brandon Ayuk from the San Francisco 49ers. We were on this podcast during training camp when I was at practice with Brandon Ayuk's agent, and Frank was on the show being like, this is happening. He's going to the Steelers. Let me tell you, that man did not go to the Steelers. And then we say, okay, this week, Jeremy Fowler, who was the Steelers beat writer for ESPN for a while, now he's a national writer. He's very plugged in. He said that they were asking around about Darius Slayton of the Giants, who I think is a very good receiver and has played well, even with all the mess of the Giants offense. They didn't get that guy either. They got the guy who Aaron Rodgers wanted out of there because he was not on the red line where he was supposed to be in the game. So, like, I can't be so excited. I still think the Steelers are a very good team. They're an excellent defense, a very good offense. I expect them to make the playoffs, and I would not be surprised if they win a playoff game. But I think that when you look at their long-term team-building strategy and what they wanted at receiver the last few months, they fell very short of what they were looking for.
Yeah, not exactly the big-time trade that the Steelers were looking for, a guy with 12 catches for 166 yards this year who has been good in the past, but is dealt with so many injuries that you just wonder where he is at this point in his career. If it wasn't productive with the Jets, is it really going to be that much better with the Steelers? I don't know that. It just seems like they kept wanting to being that bidder on eBay who just doesn't want to bid a lot and then just keeps losing by $1 to everybody right at the last minute. And then they're like, well, we need to get something. Let's get Mike Williams. When you look back and you say, well, why didn't you just pay a little bit more for DeAndre Hopkins? He's so much better. Why didn't you just pay a little bit more than the Chiefs did? Because they got him for free. And you look at like what Deontay Johnson went for, and I know the Steelers couldn't get him back, but like you didn't really have to settle for Mike Williams for a fifth. That seemed like an overpay just because they're the last team standing and they need something at receiver. And I guess here's a fifth for Mike Williams. Well, Mike Williams might not be any good anymore. I totally agree with you that they should have been a little more aggressive here to try to fix this receiver situation, which is still pretty bad for them. And honestly, had they landed a DeAndre Hopkins, even though I'm not going over the moon over DeAndre Hopkins here at this stage of his career, it's still one of those things where, okay, that fits such a need for them. All of a sudden, what's the Steelers' weakness? But they couldn't do that. And now the Steelers' weakness is still their weakness, and that's probably in the passing game.
Yeah, I feel like they were playing let's make a deal, and they had, they had one of these wide receivers they wanted, and they're like, no, let's see what's behind door number 3, and they ended up getting zoinked. Mike Williams will make no difference to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This whole thing is a bit of a disaster. And any trade out there that we thought would happen that didn't, any move that stands out is like, how did this team not get active, or how did this person not get moved?
I think one thing for me was the Lions not doubling up at pass rusher. There were guys out there they could have added. The Zadarius Smith, I thought was very smart. I think it fits what they need to do. They didn't go crazy. Like this whole, they're just going to go get Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. Like, come on, let's stop that. Let's remember this next year. That doesn't happen very often. But for them to get Zadarius, very smart. But I thought they were going to double up because you can't Zadarius is not a one-for-one replacement for Aiden Hutchinson by any means. A good player. He's not Aiden Hutchinson. So I thought they just would have, look, this is the Lions window right now. They are, to me, the best team in football. If there's a time to get crazy, go all in, go get another pass rusher, go get 2 more pass rushers. I was surprised the Lions didn't double up, but they're a great front office. I do trust what they're doing. I just wanted to see them make one more move for that defense to really help them get over the hump.
That's so interesting because I actually think that they were one of my winners. And that's because, first of all, I do think Zadarius Smith is very strong. And I think that when you look at what he's been able to do in terms of active pressures relative to any of the edge rushers that the Lions had, even including Aiden Hutchinson, although obviously he hasn't played all of the games, he had way more active pressures. And why I liked the trade was because the Lions have been getting pressure on the quarterback, but it's been coming from the interior, from the defensive tackles. And so if you told me you had a great edge rusher and now you were just going to be rotating him in with Zadarius Smith, I would be like, okay, but isn't that a little bit superfluous? You're just kind of having to play one or the other. But now that you can put him beside these defensive tackles that have been getting the pressure, and oh, by the way, when you talk about how the rush and coverage work together, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph and all these guys are going to be able to have even more opportunities to make plays on the ball because Zadarius Smith will be part of that defensive front collective. I actually thought it was a great trade, and it was what they needed. Again, they were still winning and they were still impacting quarterbacks even after Aiden Hutchinson. And so if anything, I was concerned they'd be like, we're fine. And I don't think they should do that because from a coaching and a roster standpoint, they are so competitive and I think should be the favorites in the NFC. If not for the Super Bowl, maybe Patrick Mahomes changes that. And the last thing I'll say is that when you look at Zadarius Smith, I always think it's interesting when guys go back to divisions that they played for because first of all, they'll have a chip on their shoulder. And second of all, they'll understand very well what the competition is, what some of the scheme tendencies are, all of that. This is a guy who played for Green Bay for 3 years, won 2 Pro Bowls there. This is Pro Bowl berths. This is a guy who played for the Vikings, was a Pro Bowler there. He's on his 3rd NFC North team, and he's got a chance to just go wreak havoc in a division that is the most competitive division in the league. So I think that's a great move.
Yeah, I thought the move was great, but I just thought they should have doubled up. They could have doubled up. I mean,
whom? Preston Smith?
Yes, why not? Whoever's out there.
Preston Smith for 7th is it's pretty low cost to pay. They gave up I think once that you give up you don't have to give up anything for Zadarius Smith, a 5th and a 6th. Who cares if you're the Detroit Lions?
There's still salary, I believe.
I think, salary matters too, but I think that they could have figured that out. I just wanted to see them go all in, really. Be the team that's screw it, this is our window. We have the best team of football. We haven't won a championship since 1957. Let's make all the moves. I love the Smith move. I think the Smith move was great. I just think they could have kept going when we're talking about surprise deposit trades that weren't made. That was it for me, that the Lions, they were like, this is our move. That's it. We're cool. If they would have given up a mid-round pick for Zadarius Smith, they've been like, okay, we've already spent a little bit, but you kind of get him for free. 5th and a 6th, I don't care. If you're the Lions, you got a good enough roster, you can absorb that. So get a little more aggressive and go get another pass rusher or whoever you want. I mean, again, like, why didn't they go get Deontay Johnson for a late round pick swap? Like, why didn't they? Like, I just wanted to see the Lions get super aggressive. Maybe I'm just being a little dumb and almost like being fantasy football-ish over here, because I just wanted to see the Lions make all the moves. But I just think this is their window. They could have gone out and made a few more moves.
I got on you about that last week, Frank, when you were like, everyone needs to make every trade. And I'm like, that's not how real world works. And it's probably not how your fantasy league works either.
No, it's not. Not very few of my fantasy leagues. Yes.
All right. Well, there was one team that did some work that's being absolutely destroyed for it. The Cowboys make a curious trade, and they're dealing with the Dak injury. We'll figure out what it means for the Cowboys when we come back. Dak is going to miss some time, and the Cowboys went into the trade deadline and made a blockbuster move. All right, even I can't try and make this thing work. Jonathan Mingo to the Cowboys for a 4th. Let me tell you guys a story. I got a buddy named Louis.
We got a story
we always got a buddy. Yeah, we always got a buddy.
I got a buddy named Louis.
A lot of buddies.
All right. Okay. I went to Vegas this summer with some buddies, and Louis was one of my buddies. And Louis came with a wad of cash, right? And at the beginning of the trip, Louis was doing real well. Just put the money on black at the roulette wheel, was doing great. And then all of a sudden, Louis wasn't doing great. Like, as usual, if you play any roulette, like, it works for a minute, then it doesn't work. Louis made the Cardinals in. Like, Louis went through the whole trip, was at least by the end of it, was at the spot where it's like, hey, I may not be up, but I'm not down that much. And then Louis did the one thing you never do when you're in Vegas and you've already gone through your wad of cash. He went to the ATM in the casino. Like, that is the one mistake you can't make. You go to the ATM in the casino, you're paying a higher amount, and you know you're doing what you shouldn't do. You came with the wad of cash. Now you're going into the bank account. And then what did he do? He took that wad of cash and he went over to the roulette table and he put it all on black. And we were all sitting there saying, Louis, don't do this. You don't have to do this. He put it on black. Lost all the money.
Don't do it,
went
Louis.
back to the ATM. So Louis is Jerry Jones in this situation. Jerry Jones is looking around and he's like, well, I don't know. Like, something's got to happen here. My luck will turn around. So we went to the casino ATM. He put the money on black, and all of a sudden he ends up with Jonathan Mingo. Like, there's a moment where you're just so desperate to make something happen that even everybody around you is like, what are you doing, dude? And all of a sudden he still does it anyway, and he ends up right where he is. So to me, Jerry Jones is Louis, and I'm just sitting back here laughing, saying, all your friends would have told you this was going to happen. You're broke because of you.
The one thing I'll say is, like, if you're picking off of a tree, pick off the Panthers tree, because it's just obvious that they don't know how to use their talent, and maybe you can get something out of them. But this kind of roster building to me is lazy. It is, well, we had this guy really highly ranked coming out of college. I covered a coach for a long time who did this constantly. His son might be coaching in San Francisco these days. And it's just this, well, yeah, he didn't do well there, but I can fix him. I have the magic juice to fix him. And it just seems like the Cowboys are saying, like, well, we loved him coming into the draft. Of course we could fix him. No, there's a lot of NFL tape on Jonathan Mingo now, and a lot of analytics that say he has been one of the worst receivers in the NFL. And to give a 4th for him was just like, what are you doing? Like, I get that, like, teams pay more when it's cost controlled and there's young upside and blah, blah, blah. But maybe just Jonathan Mingo's not very good. And maybe you shouldn't be giving up a 4th for a guy who's shown nothing on the NFL level, but it's this hubris of, we can fix him, he'll be fine. Like, that doesn't work out very often.
Yeah, see, I look at it a little bit differently. So on Monday, we're in this Cowboys space where the Cowboys were at 3-5. Dak had hurt his hamstring. He didn't finish the game. Then we start to get this news that Dak is going to be out multiple weeks. They're still assessing exactly the plan of recovery, but injured reserve is likely, we knew by Tuesday morning. And I reached out to an NFC executive from a team that was not named the Dallas Cowboys. And I was like, okay, you had mentioned this player that you were interested in on the Cowboys roster. Are you guys going to go back to the Cowboys talking about this player? Because they're 3-5. They're probably not making the playoffs. And now their quarterback's out. Like, they should have reasons to sell. And the NFC executive, again, Monday afternoon, so long time before the trade deadline, goes, I don't really think it's Jerry's type to sell. He said, his exact quote was, I feel it's so not Jerry to sell. We don't think they'll trade. And that's just kind of how the league views it. And the league is right. So then Jerry kept being like, we're going to make a move. And I was like, There are 4 reasons the Cowboys could have made a move. The first, to try and make it to the playoffs in 2024. It's not happening. They were already not really happening, and then they lost Dak. It's not happening. The second, to try and have better talent in 2025 and beyond. The likelihood of Mike McCarthy being the coach next year is very slim when you think of all of the things you need to do and everything that's happened. They don't align. So why are you adding talent when you don't know who your coaches are going to be and you don't know what your scheme is going to be? Let your next coach use a 4th rounder to pick your talent. When, by the way, the Cowboys have had immense success in the 4th round since 2016. Dak Prescott, Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson, Tyler Biadasz, Tony Pollard, Dorrance Armstrong. I mean, 6 of their 12 picks since then are starting for 4 teams across the league. And of the 6 that didn't, 5 of them were on IR. So the guys who stayed healthy largely went on to make it. The third reason you make a move is because you got a great deal for it. Well, they didn't. They gave up a 4th round pick for Jonathan Mingo. And the final reason is because you want to keep fans engaged and sell hope. And I think that is a bad reason to make a trade and a very big factor in it. When I look at the Jonathan Mingo trade, and I talked to people around the league who had worked with Jonathan Mingo and who had evaluated Jonathan Mingo, and they said, look, this guy has great speed. This guy has great size. He has that physicality where he can be effective in the blocking game, and he can get the yards after the catch. But he has not had the confidence at the NFL level that has impacted his ability to catch the ball. He doesn't have great hands. He's not a supernatural route runner, according to people who study him way closer than I am. And so he's had, I believe it's 6 drops in the league, and 3 passes that have been intended for him have been intercepted. Again, he hasn't played that many games. He has the lowest catch percentage of all the receivers who were targeted on any regular basis for the Carolina Panthers. And on top of that, when you look at what's supposed to be one of his wins, which is his versatility, that he can go between outside and the slot, that's what you have in CeeDee Lamb. So this is not someone who, if he works out, will give you something you don't have. You want to have CeeDee Lamb, who's able to create a lot of mismatches in the slot, with someone who can be on the outside creating these problems. That's not Jonathan Mingo. So there are just so many reasons. And again, I hope for Jonathan Mingo that this works. I hope for the Cowboys that this works. I would be happy to be proven wrong. But when you are thinking about, can I feel good about making this decision? No, you cannot.
And you go back to selling hope. If Jonathan Mingo is the hope that you're selling, like,
get your season tickets now, everybody.
Even a bad team's going to look around and be like, oh, man, oh, great, Jonathan Mingo. Like, people aren't running out to buy their Cowboys Mingo jerseys, right? Like, so what's next?
You never know. I saw a jersey on New York City, Upper West Side, for safety Donovan Wilson on Sunday, and I was like, you go, dude. Like, I know that guy's a decent player, but, like, I did not expect thousands? I think it's thousands of miles away.
Yeah, we'll give you thousands
from
miles.
Texas to find safety Donovan Wilson. So I'll be looking for that Jonathan Mingo jersey.
Also, I don't want to bury the lead of crisis here with Dak getting hurt. And there's certain things that we just can't change, the inevitability. Cooper Rush has this beloved, like, Cowboys fans look at Cooper Rush like it's Taylor Swift in her prime. Like, it's just sitting there, it's like, oh, Cooper Rush can do everything that Dak does. I heard this constantly at ESPN. Every time Cooper wins a game, they're like, we don't need Dak. Cooper can come in and win games. It is the weirdest love affair with a backup quarterback I can remember. If Cooper Rush comes in and wins a bunch of games, Cowboys fans are going to sit here and say, we never should have paid Dak. He's a bum. If Cooper Rush loses a bunch of games, then McCarthy's the bum. Like, the Cowboys are in a weird lose-lose situation where even if they tread water with their backup while Dak is getting healthy, they're still going to lose in the court of public opinion because Cowboys fans have the weirdest love affair with Cooper Rush I can remember of any team with a backup quarterback.
Fitz, here's what I would say. I don't think it was the Cowboys fans. I think it was the ESPN talking heads during that run when he went like 4-1 in a season who were like, and you got to give Jerry some accountability here. I was at the Star in the hallway when Jerry, not only did he stop to say hi when he didn't have to stop, this was not a press conference, but he goes, you never know. Well, I was something about he would walk from Dallas to New York if this happened, and he believed that Cooper Rush. So Jerry tried to sell this. So I think, to me, it's number one, accountability falls on Jerry for trying to sell that the year that Dak was hurt for a short-term period of time. And second, the talking heads. I don't think the Cowboys fan base, especially in 2024, thinks that Cooper Rush can do everything that Dak can do. I'm sure you heard that, but I was not, having lived in Dallas and having a pretty decent Cowboys echo chamber around me, I don't think that's the narrative right now.
Well, and it could just be the social media that I saw, but when I was tweeting out there,
this was the runner-up for MVP last year, and I'm not saying some of that wasn't inflated stats.
Yeah, but look at the way they treated Dak when he got paid. Even as the runner-up for MVP, Cowboys fans sat there and said you shouldn't pay Dak. Like, that was a constant social media just pounding. And every time I would sit here and say, hey, I think the Raiders are going to offer him $60 million a year, I got killed on social media by Cowboys fans. They're like, he's not worth that. We could just put in Cooper Rush. Like, there's this weird, like, Cooper Rush can do anything that Dak can do mentality that is just, it's asinine. And even if Cooper has success here, let's not get it twisted. Cooper Rush is not a high-level starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm sorry. But, man, I certainly saw it when Dak was getting paid. Cowboys fans embrace their starting quarterback, their current starting quarterback, less than most teams that I can remember that have a really good starting quarterback. Like, all they want to do is figure out a reason why Dak isn't good enough. So Cooper is going to be part of that narrative if he succeeds.
Fine. I'll give you that. I think that, to me, what is interesting is that the narrative against Dak, against McCarthy, against the Cowboys has been they are really good when it doesn't matter most, and they are not good enough when it matters most. And that's also why I'm not trying to run McCarthy out of the job, although his contract's expiring, so it's not even a matter of firing him. It's that if the threshold for this guy is going to keep his job was winning deep into the playoffs and arguably going to an NFC championship, a 3-5 record ain't going to cut it.
Nope.
Yeah, well, you're
also,
right about
like,
that.
this is not a team that is super well disciplined and just had a little bit of bad injury luck. Like, they had 10 men on the field for one of the third down defensive plays last week. They had 12 men on the field on another play.
Christ.
They had pre-snap penalties. They had false starts. The 4th and 1. I mean, like, there are a lot of things that are very clearly coaching that are problems here.
All right, from problems to good things. We'll break down Frank's power rankings. We'll do it next. Frank, power rankings are out, and as usual, they suck. All right, no, I kid. It's a beautiful, glorious job by you. I was impressed because you resisted the temptation and you did God's work. You put the Detroit Lions at number 1. Even though the Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated, you put the Lions at the king of the power rankings. You feel good about that still? You feel like, how hard was that decision, Frank?
It was hard. I mean, when you consider that the back-to-back defending champions are 8-0 and you're putting another team ahead of them, that is hard. I did think about it for a long time, but then kind of felt better about it by the end of Monday night when the Chiefs probably lose that game and Todd Bowles goes for 2. Or at least, I guess 50-50 if the Buccaneers get that. But the Detroit Lions just been the best team I've seen all year. And there's a lot of analytics to back that up too. Yes, they lost one game, but that was a weird loss to the Bucs. We kind of teased it on Sunday that I was considering it. And yeah, I had to do it because I had to be true. I don't just go by the record. I never have. I think that's a dumb way. It's honestly, as dumb as this sounds, a team's record is only one data point. It really is. Like, your strength of schedule goes involved with, et cetera, et cetera. And I watch all these games for a reason. And the best team I've seen this season is the Detroit Lions. And I don't want to say it's not close, but it's pretty convincing that the Lions are the number 1 team in the NFL right now.
Okay, I have a few things that are like kind of irrelevant, but I'm going to say them anyway. The first, last week I gave Fitz a hard time about robbing Peter to pay Paul. This week I'd like to give Fitz a hard time about people doing God's work, because we've got Stone doing God's work behind the glass. We've got Frank doing God's work with power rankings. I just need like I'm fairly religious. I don't need other people to be religious. But given that like God's work in Fitz's book looks a little different than mine, I need that. Secondly,
100%. By the way, yes, God's work in my God, in my book. God has a lot of free time, so he's still dabbing a little work over here, dabbing a little work over there.
If he's all powerful. Secondly, before we get back on track related to the Lions, if I were to tell you guys that there was a team in the NFL who had beat the Detroit Lions and taken the Kansas City Chiefs to overtime, what would you think about that team's long-term prospects this season?
Yeah, right. I thought about that too. I thought as they were driving down for what was the game tying touchdown, and they were going to go for 2, I never even thought they were going to go for 1. It was
you cannot
awful.
say the Bucs are fake.
I know. I was like, the Buccaneers are about ready to beat the Lions and the Chiefs both on the road. This is really, really something. And then Todd Bowles screwed it up. So yeah, to your point, I think the Buccaneers are that weird team where I'm going to look back at the end of the season and say, they actually were a really good team that had a bunch of crazy losses. And the injuries didn't help and all this, the game they blew against the Falcons on Thursday night and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think the Buccaneers are actually pretty good. The injuries are a lot for them. But overall, I think, and a lot of this is Baker. Baker played really, really well on Monday night, considering they were just like, here's Kate Otten and figure it out, okay? We have nothing else. We're sorry. But yes, the Buccaneers are this close to being the only team to beat the Lions and the Chiefs and do both on the road.
And Fitz, where do you think they stand in Frank's power rankings?
Where are they, Frank?
No. Fitz, give us your guess. You can do a range if you want.
Because we're bringing it up, I'll say the range of around 22.
18, but
18,
still...
18, man.
They went down 3
not
spots.
bad. That's about right.
I know,
They
it's
chased
hard.
to overtime and went down 3 spots. Frank, calm down. Okay,
It is hard.
get back
Some
on
teams got
track.
to move up. Teams got to move up. Their teams are doing well,
and the
too.
Buccaneers, who without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin took the Chiefs to overtime, deserve to be in that category. But I do think, I already talked about the Lions in the course of Zadarius Smith. I think that they got that defensive piece that is going to allow their defense to continue to compete in the playoffs, because I think they already had what they needed in the regular season. And I also think offensively, we can just not overstate how much the coaching staff of the Lions is contributing to this talent. I'm not trying to give Jared Goff a hard time. I think Jared Goff also gets a lot of unfair criticism, and he has now taken 2 teams to very high heights, and you can't do that if you're not a very good quarterback. I also think that recipe that the Chiefs have, where Andy Reid is there every year and Steve Spagnuolo is there every year, and both of them are creating this system and understanding and building off it, that's what we're seeing right now from Dan Campbell, from Ben Johnson, and from Aaron Glenn. And I don't think that's going to be the case next year, because I expect both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, their coordinators, to be head coaches elsewhere. So the Lions got to get this done this year. They have the pieces.
That's why they should have made more trades, Jori. That's why they should have made more trades.
He's caught me.
I will say, as I sit here and look at it, Tampa Bay at 18, behind the Broncos and the Bengals. I mean, what did the Bengals show you this week? I mean, they beat the Raiders.
I get that, but at some point, we know the Bengals are coming, right? We're going to get the Thursday Night Football in a second, right? Yeah.
You just said a 2-point conversion. If they converted a 2-point conversion to get the win over the Chiefs, they would have been probably 13th in your rankings. So one play drops them 5 spots. Your rankings are just absolutely, you're fraud. Frank Schwab, Frank the fraud. That's going to be Frank the fraud, Schwab. And that's also because you said I wasn't somebody you love every day at the beginning of the show, taking my shots.
Oh, I love you every day. You know
the Cardinals go from 22 to 14.
Overdue a little bit.
Someone had to pass the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Exactly.
I get more impressed by this Cardinals team every week because of their defense. I thought their defense was going to stink, legitimately be the worst in football. Thank you, Carolina Panthers, for taking that title. But Jonathan Gannon's doing what Dan Quinn is doing on the East Coast. Jonathan Gannon has his defense playing better and better and better. And I don't really know how he's doing it, because I don't think they have a lot of talent. We know the offense is good. At some point, we have to sit there and say, this is the number 1 team in the NFC West right now. If the season ended today, they would be the NFC West champs. I probably was too low on them last week. I was one of these they just keep winning these close games. They absolutely took it to the Chicago Bears, who might not be good, and they're obviously poorly coached, but the Cardinals deserved a bump up. I was too low. It was me being too low on them a week ago, and now I think they're about right. I think they're about in that 14 range, where all of a sudden you could see a path of the Cardinals being a playoff team.
Yeah, I think, by the way, of all the teams in the NFC West right now, I do not trust Geno Smith at all. So I'm out on Geno. I don't know if the 49ers can get healthy enough in time.
Ooh,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what, I don't trust those Seahawks. I don't think the 49ers can get healthy. I do believe that the Rams have plenty of runway left. So this really becomes about the Rams or the Cardinals in this division. It's interesting. I mean, I could go 50-50 on this.
I don't know who's going to win this division. I'll still take the 49ers. I think Christian McCaffrey's a top 10 all-time running back. He's going to come back and make a massive difference, I think. And he's going to change what they do. And the 49ers will look like the 49ers by the end of the season. But hasn't happened yet. I guess at some point you got to do it before I really should be buying in there.
Yeah, I do wonder at what point is it going to be too late for the 49ers. I think they'll be winning games late in the season and competitive, but there is a point at which, if they haven't won. But I also might just think that because they've been on their bye, and so they didn't win this week, and so it's kind of like a recency bias thing.
All right, let's get to a little Thursday night preview before we get out of here. Cincinnati's at Baltimore in a great...
Okay, no. Before we get into this week's preview, who picked the Jets against the Texans last week?
Look at that. Yeah.
Frank now has picked 6 games correctly. Jori 5, me 3, and Stone 2. And Stone, to his credit, didn't even get involved in this thing until about halfway through. So, it's not going particularly well. It's not going particularly. There's a reason why I'm dabbling less. I am truly dabbling this year, Frank, because I am getting my ass kicked every single week. Cincinnati at Baltimore. This game is interesting to me because I don't, we talk about things I trust. I don't trust either of these defenses. The yards per play that these defenses are giving up is absolutely atrocious. The yards per drive is atrocious. There is nothing to trust about either defense in a game that means a ton to the Bengals. Cincinnati at Baltimore. All right, Frank, what do you got for us?
Well, we've seen the Bengals when they were really struggling early in the year should have beat the Ravens if they don't botch a field goal snap in overtime, right? And I look at the matchup of Burrow against this passing defense, which has been worse in the NFL this year. And I don't know why the Bengals are 6.5-point underdogs. Let's put it that way. I think the Bengals are live here. I think they could win. I don't know that necessarily I'm willing to go that far and pick them to win, but this is going to be a close game. And one thing, this is totally narrative street, by the way, but I see Joe Burrow. There was so many clips of him like kind of stomping around the sidelines on Sunday, getting mad at everybody, being annoyed at everybody. He comes out in his post-game press conference and says, like, that ain't good enough. I don't care about this. Like, he just threw 5 touchdowns and he acted like they lost the game. I think that was a message to the rest of the team of, we need to focus right now on Thursday night. This is our season. I think they come in desperate in this game. I think they're going to play really, really well. I think they're going to keep this game at least very close, and I think they got a shot to win, just like they should have in Cincinnati. I think it's going to be a heck of a game because I think Burrow's going to have a great, great night. And the only question, obviously, on whether they can win this game is, can the defense stop anybody? Like that has been a problem for them all season. I acknowledge that that's a potential fly in the ointment here, but I like the Bengals here to really, really compete hard on Thursday night and maybe even pull off the upset.
I know. I feel like from a vibe standpoint, because weird things happen on Thursday Night Football, I should be going with the Bengals. But then I look at their wins. Yes, they've won, but they beat the Carolina Panthers, the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, and Las Vegas Raiders. Those are the worst teams in the league.
But
all
also on
of
the flip
them,
side of that,
every single one of them.
They should have beat the Ravens. They should have won at the Chiefs. They're the almost team of this season, where they're having these really weird close losses to really good teams.
Right, and so I think, I definitely agree that you've got this group where both of them are much better on offense than they are on defense right now. And then I think the Ravens are a better team, but I'm going to give it to the Bengals just on like weird Thursday night vibes alone. Like weird things happen. The Jets beat the Texans and now we'll have the Bengals beat the Ravens. I still think that the Ravens will make the playoffs and the Bengals will not.
I think you simplify things on Thursday Night Football. So when you simplify the offense for Baltimore, I think they're just going to start hammering the ball. They're just going to run the ball right through Lou Anarumo's defense over and over and over again. This feels like a Derrick Henry game. Derrick Henry on a short week is just, he's going to ice bath it all week, and then he's going to come out. He's going to get a lot of carries for a lot of yards. I think the Ravens actually roll in this game. So I'm going Baltimore. And Stone is going Baltimore as well.
You just convinced me.
Ooh, come on now.
I'll be lone wolf here. I'll be lone wolf.
When we all go against Frank, it doesn't work out well for us. But yeah, we'll allow that to happen.
I'm doing it anyway. I'm changing. I'm swapping. I'm flip-flopping. Like it's a weird day today. We're doing it, but I think you're right.
All right.
I also, on that note of like what happens on Thursday night, I was talking to Jacoby Brissett, the Patriots quarterback, yesterday, and it was so interesting because I was talking to him about these like third down protection meetings that the Patriots quarterbacks lead, and I was asking him the difference between the 2 times that they played the Patriots and what he thought the 2 times they played the Jets and what he thought worked better. And I thought he was going to be like, the Jets were a mess because Robert Saleh, Aaron Rodgers, all the things. And instead he was like, oh yeah, that meeting you mentioned, we actually don't even have it on Thursday night, ahead of Thursday night games, because there's just no time and everything's condensed. So like, it is so true that like, it really does impact game planning Thursday night versus Sunday.
That only makes me feel better about the pick. I don't need to feel any better about Stone. He's already amazing. He's doing his work behind the scenes.
God's work.
He's doing God's work behind the scenes. Frank does God's work, putting the power rankings together and doing all of his great writing. Be sure to follow him on social media. And we know Jori's doing God's work, just putting up with me every single week. That's what's happening. We'll be back Friday with Feisty Fridays where Frank and C-Rob argue the whole time. And I just get him, I like to call myself a fecal disturber. I just stir the you-know-what, and I sit back and I let them go. That's my job. That's how it goes. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, your family, tell your enemies, tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. We appreciate you. Thanks so much for listening to the show.